We have moved into the disaster curse family. Hanami is going to go first. And Hanami is interesting because I think, funnily enough, seeing the way that Hanami uses her trees and the way that at least it's animated in the exchange event, where it's just a bunch of tree tendrils and Yuji and Toto are running across the trees, and we also have just being able to encompass all of Jujutsu headquarters with the great forest creation jutsu that Hanami is able to use. Like, I think a lot of and the domain. So the domain is interesting. I definitely want to focus on that, but based on like the regular fight that we've seen Hanami be able to put up, at least it might just be me, but it seems very similar to a lot of the fights that Chihiro has to deal with in the Rakuzachi arc, because we see Chihiro be able to take on the plant sorcery against Yora, be able to basically bust through an entire wall of trees, like very similar to almost what Hanami would have been able to create. And also on top of that, we also see when Chihiro is fighting Kyora, yeah, when he's fighting in the storage room, the Sazanami head is also using basically the debris and the floor and everything in his storage room to like almost like attack Chihiro in a very similar way to what Hanami would do with like Hanami's tree branches and everything. So we've seen Chihiro almost be in a very similar situation to this fight. And if not, honestly, there are like Kyora had like the grenades that he was throwing into the equation, all of the different extra things that he had in the storage room. Hanami does have the cursed buds, which Chihiro would probably have to look out for. That could be an instant win con if he gets hit with that. Even if it's not cursed energy, we could still just say it drains his stamina.
Hanami also has those the little flower bed that basically like gets rid of your
fighting spirit,
your fighting spirit, like, so he can dull them a bit. But that, like, I think a lot of things that Hanami can use against Chihiro, he has to like catch Chihiro with it, because like if once Chihiro sees it, he's not gonna let it get him again. He's not gonna let it hit him again. But in the domain expansion, if it resorts to that, because it was like confirmed in a game, that mobile game, where it's like that laser beams his short hit,
literally just a solar beam.
But like he does have to like suck up all the plants and life around him to charge up, and then he, I guess, casts his barrier and then shoots it. Chihiro could escape in that time, if he's kind of getting that danger sense queued up to like, oh, I should get out of here, there's going to be a big blast. Hanami's also durable.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the big things that Chihiro is going to run into with the curses at this stage, especially with like people like Hanami, who we know are extremely durable, way more durable than like Jogo, potentially just as durable, if not more, than Dagon. Hanami was able to tank an entire hollow purple, even though you want to say it was very far away and they were still able to dodge a little bit of it. That's still a very impressive feat. Also, on top of the fact that a lot of the curses at this stage are basically, you could cut their arms off, cut their bodies off. You could basically cut them into pieces, and 9 times out of 10 they're going to regenerate because of how much just cursed energy they are made up of. It's not as simple as Chihiro cuts off Hanami's head, the game is done. Chihiro could cut off Hanami's head and Hanami's head just grows back, whether that be from the body or the head grows the new body, So keep in mind, this is gonna be like a fighting game, where even if Chihiro, wins one round, he's probably still got a good 3-4, who knows how many more rounds to go before he finally exhausts Hanami of cursed energy and fully exercises the curse spirit.
Yeah, and Hanami, like the thing with Hanami is, especially with like the Toto Yuji fight, Hanami's using like so many different creations of like the forest. I think with Chihiro, he's gonna have to expend a lot of Kuros, and he's gonna have to use a lot of that spirit energy. And that's something that he just won't get back. Once it's gone, he depletes that, but Hanami is essentially going to just keep spamming these different things. I think it's like a battle of attrition. Yeah. And I don't know if Chihiro is going to just one-tap him necessarily.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Is it basically will just be a battle of attrition, is who lasts out longer. Is Chihiro's stamina, is his spirit energy amount, large enough to hold out to just continually fight Hanami until Hanami's cursed energy amount runs out.
You know,
just keep cutting and just keep cutting and just keep cutting. And I mean, the thing with Chihiro is that his big issue is that he doesn't really have like a big giant like yeah, exactly. He doesn't have like a big ultimate ending desperation move attack that is going to do a large amount of damage and like is going to be enough to where say, all right, Hanami is in no way surviving that. Like how Gojo literally just pushed his limitless against Hanami until Hanami literally was just dust in the wind and just gone. Like Chihiro doesn't have an attack that will be able to apply that much force. So whatever battle Chihiro is going to be in, it unfortunately will just become a battle of attrition, because even if you want to say full Nishiki cloak Kuroi into Hanami, like again, Hanami can most likely just regenerate from that. Even if you want to say full Nishiki cloak Kuroi shed and it just all over Hanami completely, you know, and just covers Hanami and slashes, maybe, but that's also you know, implying that Chihiro's even able to catch Hanami in that kind of scenario, because again, the way that Hanami's curse technique works, Hanami could be completely in another. Let's say Hanami creates a forest, Hanami can be in one end of the forest while all the trees, branches, and everything that Chihiro's fighting are completely way over in another side of the forest. Hanami doesn't even really have to be that close to Chihiro the entire fight. We know Hanami is able to hide inside of the trees, they're able to duck within, pop out. She can start fucking popping little curse bud bullets towards Chihiro while he's distracted by other tree branches.
She can essentially just lift Chihiro up with the roots and everything to where he's gotta like use a move in order to not fall. Yeah, I think with like especially Hanami's bag and the fact that, you know, she is durable, it's just like she can just spam multiple different things to keep Chihiro busy. You know, like if we gave Chihiro like Hakuri, and they could go to the storehouse to where Hakuri can like teleport him and like, you know,
give him the same benefit as like Yuji got with Todo.
Yeah, like that's his domain expansion out if we had Hakuri, because he could just pop him out.
Yeah, because that's one problem too, is like you know, like you said, domain is going to be rough, especially like a domain like Hanami's, which is basically I trapped you in the domain and all right, here's this giant solar beam, hyper beam that's just going to literally annihilate you. And I would have to say that like a domain of that level, especially with Hanami, should be more than enough to probably take out Chihiro. I mean, I guess you could argue that Chihiro could Akka the attack, but again, there's no guarantee he would survive that. At that point, we're kind of, you know, we just don't have, I don't know, I don't know if we have enough proof that Chihiro would be able to survive a domain expansion like that through Akka, but
I don't even, see, I think like Akka would be able to, you know, absorb the laser beam attack, because it's like a pure energy type thing, but he wouldn't be able to like Akka the plants or nothing like that. Like I don't think we've seen him Akka like, because Hanami physically manifests those things, so.
I don't necessarily think he'd be able to Akka that. I definitely do definitely mean like the solar beam or whatever she sends in the domain expansion. That would be like the only, but like again, I don't know if it would be too much for him to handle, because he's pretty banged up after taking the Sojo lightning explosion, and that's like barely anywhere close to the same kind of destructive capacity.
You know, I mean, that could be if he could deal with the backlash after Akka and absorbing that you know, solar beam attack, then Chihiro's W at that point, because
probably because Hanami would be
Hanami has to absorb
exhausted,
all the plant life and everything, and you know, burnt out curse technique. I mean, that could be a win con for Chihiro, you know, if we think that he does outlast that beam, but we have nothing to really go up against, because we've never seen it actually like in canon.
Yeah,
but, I mean, just because of the bag, I think I got Hanami, but it's gonna be like, you know, I think it'd be like a Hanami's gonna win, but it's very difficult for Hanami to win.
Yeah, I would probably honestly, at least against Hanami, I would say Hanami's main win conditions are going to be domain expansion for sure, maybe Cursed Bud. Now, there's going to be two interpretations of this, right? Because obviously we have to consider that if we are giving Chihiro way faster than lightning speed, as well as with Nishiki, you know, giving him, you know, 3 times amplification, potentially higher than that, that, then, you know, with Chihiro having that kind of crazy speed, I think, as well as the attack potency to be able to handle like the tree branches and anything that Hanami really handles, I think Chihiro mostly has like the base fight pretty easily handled for the most part. It's gonna be tough for him, just because, again, then it just becomes, again, who lasts the longest. Will Chihiro's stamina last long enough to kill Hanami 4, 5, 6, however many times it takes before Hanami's curse energy exhausts out? And then at that point, if Hanami does really get completely desperate, we get a domain expansion. Sure, Chihiro's pretty fast. He might be able to, you know, dodge the domain, especially knowing how Hanami's domain works, where Hanami literally has to absorb the plant life in the area to gain enough energy and open up the eye in their arm. So
that's pretty obvious what's going on too at that moment. Like, he would see that and know. Yeah,
exactly. He would definitely be able to, like, he'd be able to see that happening and would be able to respond with like a Kuro or like some type of way to like stop that from happening. But even if he did get caught, I guess it really comes down to, do you think he'd be able to survive the blast with Akka? And like you said, if he is able to survive the blast with Akka, then at that point it should be Chihiro's win. Even if Chihiro is heavily damaged, he won't have a way to recover, he won't have a way to regenerate. But at that point, Hanami will be on her last legs. I mean, they'll both be on their last legs. So I think if we equalize speed, it definitely becomes a lot harder for Chihiro to win, because
and
then the
that's what I
base
was
fight.
basing my thing off of. Was like equalize speed. But if we give him his normal speed, then he's just outspeeding past the plants and ending it.
Yeah, no, I definitely think equalized speed, Chihiro has a much harder time in the base fight. Domain is definitely, and then it comes down to, again, like, Domain is an instant win, potentially, depending on Akka. But if we're giving Chihiro his regular stats, and Hanami with their regular stats, I think Chihiro has more win cons. It's just, but frankly, the only win con that Hanami has would be the domain expansion if Chihiro can't survive it. And then again, if we're giving Chihiro all of his speed, he should be able to, you know, dodge any of the curse buds and any of the attacks that come by. I would even go as far as to argue he might even be able, with the curse buds and whatever, he might either be able to, if not cut them out, or do the Nishiki might be able to stop them, or he might be able to Akka or do something. Either way, I think he should be faster. I think Hanami is a high diff W, high diff. Hanami's right in between high diff W, high diff L. They're honestly in like a 50-50 kind of like territory almost, depending on like what way the fight really ends up going. Hey guys, real quick, if you want to support the channel, make sure you go down to gamersubs.gg/noop and get 10% off your nootropics and energy supplement fix, and we'll get back to the video. We'll put Hanami in the 50-50 category because it really could go either way. And again, domain is going to be the biggest thing there, like we mentioned earlier, but that's also going to be a big problem when it comes to someone like Dagon, because Dagon, while they're not as durable as Hanami, they're still pretty spongy. They're still pretty fucking, you know, HP heavy. They're very durable. They can handle a lot of attacks. They're able to fight Naobito, Maki, and Nanami all at the same time and handle all of their attacks and take little to no damage really until Naobito kind of locked in, right? Yeah, water is going to be a pretty big issue. Not as like aerial and as like easily manipulated as Hanami's, you know, with the tree branches, but, you know, Dagon can still, you know, manipulate the water, do water blasts, can completely flood the entire Shibuya station that they were fighting in. But Dagon's big problem is Dagon is just freshly born, so they are very, very inexperienced in fighting. So Chihiro probably has, even with Chihiro's limited experience of fighting, Chihiro probably has the advantage when it comes to straight up, you know, hands.
Yeah, because he's like he's fighting for his life. You know what I mean? Chihiro's got like the little experience he has is valuable experience.
I think base wise in like regular fighting, like again, speed equalization, non-speed equalized. If Naobito was clocking Dagon and making him, you know, embarrassed just from his little projection sorcery speed, then Chihiro should have no problem wailing on Dagon just as strong, especially if we are considering he can Nishiki cloak. Even if Chihiro doesn't have like that ultimate attack like we were saying against Hanami, Naobito was literally just throwing hands and feet. So I have no doubt that a Nishiki cloak to Chihiro should be able to replicate that kind of mollywopping, especially again if we already know that a speed blitz is more than enough to catch Dagon off guard and put him to the floor.
Just in character, I can see Chihiro just ending it before he even resorts to a domain expansion. You know, Chihiro kind of goes for the kill when he goes, like, he's not one of those people that has to like warm up in a fight, you know what I mean? He just starts off like trying to, you know, end it.
Yeah, the domain is going to be the biggest issue for sure. Chihiro doesn't have any anti-domain measures. He's going to get trapped inside of Dagon's domain if he gets stuck in it. And now you could argue that, like you said, what Tiberius just said, you know, Chihiro is going to be going for the kill. Naobito literally, like, I think punched through his arms and broke his fucking arms and chest apart, so he couldn't domain. Obviously Dagon was still able to make like the hand sign with like the little spirit symbol inside of his body, but Chihiro's main issue is he probably wouldn't be aware of, you know, trying to avoid the domain expansion. Even if you want to argue like, oh well, he's fought all of these characters that might have had domain beforehand, still, like, I think Chihiro not being as experienced as someone like Naobito, that's like obviously a veteran sorcerer who has been fighting for probably his whole life being in the Zenin clan, I don't want to give Chihiro that kind of advantage. So either way, like, we would have to imagine that the way that Dagon works, this fight is always going to amount to a domain expansion. Again, speed equalization or not, even if we do equalize speed, the moment that Chihiro activates Nishiki cloak, he will gain an advantage in speed. 3 times whatever their equalized speed is going to be still 3 times faster than Dagon. And with Nishiki cloak, you know, cloaking his body, it's increasing his body's physicality, it's increasing his AP, his durability. He should be able to just push through, cut through the water, no problem. And also you have things like Kuro Shred that should be able to slip through Dagon's water shield and actually use a bunch of small slashes to just kind of surround Dagon with. And because of Dagon's inexperience, he'll be a lot easier to catch than Hanami will. Not to say that Hanami's inexperienced or anything, but ultimately at the end of the day, what I think we're getting at is that Chihiro most likely would win the base fight, and that in the domain is where he would have the biggest issue, because Horizon of the Captivating Skanda has the Death Swarm, the never-ending swarm of man-eating Shikigami that are also invisible. They do not appear until they have already attacked you and they are already on you. So the biggest thing that Chihiro is going to run into is that with no anti-domain measures, the Shikigami are going to just completely swarm him, completely cover him in just teeth and attacks, and just completely eat him alive until there's nothing left of him. And we've already seen how, like, those attacks can really do damage to people in Dagon's domain, up against Nanami, up against Maki, up against Naobito. Naobito lost an arm, Nanami lost an eye. However, the one thing that is also aware is that these characters were able to survive, you know, the onslaught of Shikigami and fight the Shikigami off. Again, it's an endless swarm. They're going to keep coming, but you are able to fight off the Shikigami if you're able to survive. And again, we should at the very least, based off of characters like Nanami, characters like Naobito, be able to award a character like Chihiro similar durability to at least be able to, I mean, Nanami was literally covered in Shikigami. He had them all over him, eating him all across the place. So Chihiro, we have seen him take damage and take the risk and fight regardless of it. We know Chihiro can fight under extreme pressures. That isn't going to be the issue. The issue is, will he be able to handle enough of the Shikigami attacks to get to Dagon and land a killing blow? With Nishiki cloak, that's going to provide him a huge advantage, higher advantage than someone like Nanami, someone like Naobito would, simply because, again, he's getting a 3 times amplified durability. He's getting 3 times amplified defense up against characters that he's already comparing to in, like, base. When he was fighting Hirohiko in the theater, he was completely surrounded by Hirohiko's paper everywhere and was able to use Kuro to just completely, as we mentioned, darken the entire room in his slashes. And even though he ended up completely covering himself in scars, he was still able to completely ward off every single attack and also keep all of the innocent people in the area safe with the attack. So I think we have seen Chihiro handle like completely all out, all around attacks like that before, especially if we are to say that if Nanami was able to get hit by a man-eating Shikigami, slash one away, and then also be like, hey, Maki, they're all coming after us, they're all invisible, you have to be able to, you know, dodge it, blah 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 blah, and then he gets hit again, gets hit by a bunch again, still breaks out of that swarm. We know now Bito was able to do like the falling blossom motion, which isn't similar to simple domain, it's literally just someone doing a bunch of small curse energy attacks to like keep up. So
auto defense.
It is I think if we were to give Chihiro Nishiki Cloak, if we were to give him Kuro Shred, and because of Chihiro's insane intelligence, adaptability, if he can survive one swarm and cut them all off, break free with Nishiki Cloak and run away, and I think Chihiro probably could find a way to keep himself safe at least long enough to damage Dagon and fight Dagon. Because the issue is you know, how much damage did Chihiro do before the domain? How much curse energy does Dagon have after the domain? Because at least Megami was assuming that if he stopped the domain and they broke out of the domain, Dagon wouldn't have the ability to domain again. So it's assuming that once Dagon domains, he's going to be running on very low cursed energy. Depending on how much damage Chihiro takes in the domain, if he can break Dagon and get him out of his domain, I mean, if Toji was able to do it, it's just if you believe Chihiro can fight through the domain expansion, which based off of all of the kind of things that we've talked about, I think we've come up with multiple reasons of why he could be able to, but also I could see why it would still be something that would be difficult for Chihiro to do and would probably end up being more difficult than the Choso fight.
He could handle it long enough to take care of Dagon, but he's going to be feeling it afterwards.
Moving on to Jogo, the man, the myth, the legend himself, our boy, our patron saint of the channel. The big issue that Jogo is going to provide compared to all of the other disaster curses is not only is he just as elementally sound when it comes to manipulating his curse technique of choice, his element of choice is fire. All of Jogo's constructs of his curse technique are going to immediately be damaging to Chihiro just because of the mere fact that they're burned. It's fire. He's creating plumes of fire. He's creating plumes of lava. Everything that Jogo does, even if we want to say that Chihiro is going to be able to like dodge it, of course, with the speed, all of that stuff, like if Chihiro does get, you know, grazed or tapped by Jogo, especially what we've seen Jogo's capable of in the anime fight against Sukuna, where it's literally enveloping a huge amount of the city that they're fighting in, Chihiro is going to be, you know, definitely in a lot more danger than he is with Hanami or Dagon. However, I think by the pure nature of fire, I think Akka actually becomes a viable defense finally, as opposed to Dagon or Hanami.
He has to absorb it with the sword, right? The fire is coming at him like 360 degrees. Like that's Jogo does big blast. And then the domain expansion as well. Just the heat alone. This would be the first scenario where like it's easily go to Jogo.
Obviously, the big thing is going to be Chihiro's speed advantage, right? Chihiro is going to be mountains of times faster than Jogo is Jogo's going to be. So that's going to be his big claim to fame in this fight, right? Like Jogo is going to
Jogo's faster than like Dagon and Hanami, but the thing is he's less durable.
Jogo is a huge downgrade when it comes to durability, when it comes to longevity, when it comes to endurance and things like that, which is going to be a big benefit for Chihiro in this fight, because if Chihiro is just monumentally faster than Jogo, then Chihiro is going to be able to apply attacks like Kuroi Shred, also absorb and counter attacks from Jogo with Akka much more efficiently than he would be able to handle characters that are moving at his own speed.
Jogo also has those little flying insects that he uses that like they do notable damage. He has those little volcanoes that he sprouts. He can just basically make it to where he's covering the terrain in fire. He's attacking, doing big attacks like all over the place. He can attack you from multiple directions. And I think that like that's what's screwing Chihiro up. Like I don't think Shred is going to be as useful in this fight as the other ones because envelop the area in like heat.
Chihiro can definitely, he has the speed, he has the reflexes, and he has the durability to, you know, tank an Akka one huge lava plume from Jogo. He has the speed and, you know, the reflexes with his sword to cut down a bunch of the ember insects that are coming his way way, cut them, and then move out of the way before they explode, right? What makes Jugo so much more dangerous than characters like Dagon and Hanami is the fact, like I said, again, the very nature of his attacks just on contact are going to be dangerous for Chihiro. If Chihiro Aka's one lava plume in front of him, he might be able to absorb that, but if part of that heat or part of that fire, part of those fire strokes hit his leg or hit his arm, he can get severe damaging burns that are going to slow down his pace and affect him throughout the course of the fight. Again, sure, we have said that Jugo is significantly less durable. The problem is it seems like a lot of Chihiro's attacks are probably going to be able to be matched, if not completely overwhelmed, by Jogo's lava, Jogo's fire, because this is going to be one of the first characters that is probably able to surpass, if not just completely outright exceed, Chihiro's attack potency. Nishiki Cloak might give him a little bit of an advantage and be able to help him keep pace, but Jogo's Meteor, all of Jogo's fire attacks, Jugo should, for all intents and purposes, be able to output much more attack potency than Chihiro can, which is also going to be a big problem. Chihiro needs to rely heavily on his speed in this fight, and unfortunately, just with the way that Jugo fights, his speed just might not be enough to keep him safe entirely. And if he can't land any of those critical attacks on Jugo, because what Jugo also has is Jugo can fly. Dagon can fly a little bit. Hanami can also, you know, keep himself up in the air with Hanami can keep himself up in the air with the trees and the branches, but Jugo can really just levitate and fly, which gives him a level of agility that most of the other characters on this list haven't had yet.
Because Kuro Shred, like, even thinking about the domain, right? Like those fish probably won't be able to stay active in that environment.
I also want to stress too that like Jugo is surviving full on, like fucking thrown through entire buildings and launched through. Yeah, he survives a red. He gets literally taken by the head and shoved through like multiple stories of a building, and then that building fucking explodes by Sukuna and has his jaw like ripped off. And this is going to be one thing too where like Jogo's and just the curse spirits regeneration and ability to resurrect themselves and revive themselves with cursed energy. And again, sure, Jogo's less durable than Hanami. He's not going to be able to take as much damage, but I also want to stress enough that it is completely possible that even if Chihiro gets one good Kuroi Shred, or even let's say Chihiro is able to Aka one of Jogo's fire blasts and he even gets like a good redirect counter attack and like mirror forces a fire blast through Jogo's chest, like there is still a pretty decent chance that Chihiro might not be able to cut the damage threshold and Jogo can heal. It's kind of like a 50-50 because while Chihiro is close to Jugo in power level, again, it's kind of like, is Nishiki Cloak enough to make up that difference? If it is, then that sure, Chihiro can win. If Nishiki Cloak isn't enough to make up that difference, Jugo survives what might have been Chihiro's one chance at getting one over, and then Jugo just fucking burns Chihiro after Chihiro is completely exhausted. Like, this is a battle of attrition that Chihiro does not have as many odds of winning as he would against like Hanami, you know.
I just think it's a bad matchup for Chihiro, you know.
Completely bad matchup entirely. And then we haven't even talked about domain either.
Like the domain, you know, he's dropping a meteor on him while he's trying to like deal with all the lava. He can't fly, so his like movement is based on his footing. If he has nowhere to like really set because the entire landscape is almost in lava, I mean, I just think Jugo is just a bad matchup. But I do agree that they're close in terms of like just power level.
Whether speed is equalized or not, even with Chihiro's speed difference, if we gave him the full, you know, amount of stats that he's supposed to have, I think Jugo still takes this. The tough part is with the curse spirits just being made of curse energy and just being able to regenerate any kind of wound like that. Even if Chihiro gets like a decapitation, Jugo can just come back, and then Chihiro's completely vulnerable any kind of domain or a crazy attack that Jugo wants to do. But that, and I think we might honestly run into the same kind of like bad matchup skit when it comes to Mahito, who is next, because you could argue, I guess, that, you know, spirit energy is of the soul, so sure, you know, spirit energy might be able to harm Mahito. That's kind of tough to say.
He would have to wear Mahito out where he just doesn't have any more cursed energy. But we saw what Mahito is capable of. Like in terms of like a long period of time of using his curse technique, he's always using it. I just think Mahito's got it, because the domain's another issue, you know, because his domain isn't like where the fish just pop up on you. You're in the palm of his hands automatically.
Even if you wanted to say that like Chihiro was able to hurt Mahito because let's say say we give him the eyes that are aware of the soul. You know, the true realm actually unlocks the ability to attack Mahito's soul. Just because that person is aware of the soul and can harm Mahito does not mean they have the same advantages as Yuji does in a fight against Mahito, because Yuji is completely nullified to Mahito's idol transfiguration thanks to Sukuna, whereas someone like Maki or Toji, that's just because they're aware of Mahito's soul, they should be able to hit the soul.
That like extra layer of defense. That's like
exactly, they don't have the defense against idol transfiguration, so they would be all it takes is one touch from Mahito for Chihiro to just literally be ended and be done. And the problem with Chihiro compared to someone like Nanami was able to, even if it was subconsciously, he was able to defend his soul with his cursed energy. I would struggle awarding Chihiro the same kind of, you know, benefit against idol transfiguration, but even if you wanted to say that Nishiki Cloak would help him kind of defend against idol transfiguration, we've seen someone like Nobara be only able to take one hit. Mahito, even after touching Nanami, says it's only going to take one or two more of those and you're cooked. There's not really any kind of defense that Chihiro is going to be able to use to be able to stop Mahito from one-tapping him any chance he has. So in any kind of close quarters situation that Chihiro is going to be fighting base Mahito in, it's very much different from Jogo, where Jogo was like an AoE merchant. He was able to summon lava plumes 360 degrees all around Chihiro and cover him in attacks. What makes Mahito dangerous and tough to deal with is the fact that he is just one of the craziest shapeshifters. He's able to split himself up into different clones. He's able to create duplicates of himself, split his body in half, and then have the separate halves of his body change into different blades or different arms, or like, again, it just takes one finger tap to just idol transfiguration Chihiro and end the fight, even not including domain expansion, because obviously domain expansion, self-embodiment of perfection, as you mentioned before, Chihiro's instantly in Mahito's hands, and with no simple domain. The biggest factor in this fight is idol transfiguration, and the mere fact that Mahito is able to coat entire multiple city blocks in his flesh.
And he has instant spirit body distorted killing, which like Yuji had to hit a black flash in order to damage.
Literally couldn't even damage, yeah. Chihiro can run circles around Mahito all he wants, Kuroi shred Mahito all he wants. Mahito is taking no damage whatsoever. Chihiro, even with the speed advantage, is going to eventually end up getting touched by Mahito. Even if it ends up, let's say, Mahito has to coat the entire battlefield in flesh, and then literally one step from Chihiro onto the ground, and he's touching a piece of Mahito, and Mahito can just idol transfiguration through there. Whether it's a laid trap or it's just an accidental graze, there's just no shot in hell Chihiro stands a chance. And even if Chihiro does stand a chance, domain expansion ruins any chance that might have been. It's interesting because I know a lot of people were saying that like Chihiro clears the disaster curses absolutely no problem, but I think it's pretty clear here that you've got Dagon at a high diff W, Hanami is a 50-50. It really just depends on how the fight goes. Jogo is a mid diff and Mahito's a low diff. So yeah, no, it doesn't look like Chihiro kind of goes through the disaster curses as easily as people thought. Even if you wanted to, again, give Chihiro his speed advantage, give him Nishiki Cloak, give him really everything at his disposal he can. Jogo and Mahito have win cons even outside of their domains, which I think just make the fight so much easier to designate as like mid or low diff, because it's like if Chihiro's struggling with base, the domain is just an easy argument winner.
Like JJK, it's matchup based, you know, certain people do well against others.
Yeah, 100%.